I feel like the vibes have been pretty good lately, but I know a lot of people are also still really struggling with trying to figure out their own personal energy. And I say the vibes are good because I think this the vibes in like the zeitgeist of the world right now feel pretty good with the World Cup and lots of people getting along. And so we all want more of that energy. We all want to learn how to cultivate that experience for ourselves in our everyday life. Because it's really easy to watch content and feel that experience, but how do we do it when we're in our own life around the people that trigger us? So, welcome. I am Ocean Everly, and I talk a lot about how to build a life that feels peaceful and specifically learning to create that life through skill development and learning new tools related to boundaries and conflict with your family of origin. So that's what we usually talk about. Boundaries are a big part of that conversation. And still, I would love to know if there's other questions. So I always open it up to questions. Whatever you're going through, whatever situation, relational situation you're going through, share it because there's definitely people that are going through the same situation as you. That's just where we're at. That's just us living in this earthly life where we're in a really interesting space where we're all trying to figure this stuff out at the same time. So why not learn some new tools along the way? You can find previous lives and the main tools that I teach on my YouTube page, which is linked in my bio if you have any interest in looking at that. But this live will also be posted on my YouTube after we're done. So thank you, Wellness Hub, for the follow. Thank you, Green. Okay, so I see that Green T-shot. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But hello, my dear, and welcome. Any tips on dealing with the loneliness of getting older, feeling disconnected? Um, yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that feel that way. So I would say the main thing is that I, I think that what it's about, I guess it's multifold. And I just kind of, when you guys ask questions, I just sort of speak off the cuff and whatever comes to my brain and like whatever's downloaded from the universe. So what's coming up for me is that, first of all, loneliness. Uh-oh. Okay. I just got a message that something was restricted. I don't know what I said that would have been restricted, but let me know if you know so that I can not say that. Um, oh, hey, gorgeous hearted. Good to see you, my dear. Thank you for joining. Okay. So I think one of the things about loneliness and one of the reasons why we feel so lonely is because we're yearning for somebody to reflect back this experience of feeling seen, heard, and understood. And and what we really need to do is cultivate the tools to see, hear, and understand ourselves. So that's a lot of what I've already talked about and what I know that you've heard, gorgeous hearted, which is essentially like, how do we get in deeper touch with the feelings that are coming up for us, and whether they're positive or challenging emotions, like really exciting emotions that feel really good, or whether they're emotions that feel really hard. We need to sort of tap into those in a deeper way to allow ourselves to feel seen, heard, and understood without an external without somebody externally needing somebody externally to mirror that back. Aside from, I would say, and this was a great conversation from last live, everybody should have at least one therapist, coach, or guide, some type of healer, energy, Reiki healer. You need one-on-one support through this journey. If you don't have it, get it, because most of us are when we're going through the spiritual awakening process, when we're going through the healing journey, most of us aren't going to be able to be supported by the people right around us. Most of us are not going to be able to rely on our family and our friends to support us through our growth journey. Okay, so I think that there's also this scenario that happens as we do get older where it's like you go through a period of time in life when you're younger, and those things are sufficient. The family that you have, the friends that you have is sufficient. You feel seen. But then when you sort of get to an age, whatever age that is, that you start to diverge from those people and start to perhaps explore some of your inner world a little bit more. Perhaps you start to explore some of the trauma. Maybe you start to express yourself a little bit more, trying to get curious about who you really are beyond these kind of like these given relationships in your life. What happens is you diverge away from those individuals and they no longer feel really fulfilling. They don't feel like they're reflecting back you. So you need to be able to have spaces where that stuff can be reflected back to you, but that really can only be done when you have some type of healer that's reflecting that back to you. And I say that because the journey of spiritual awakening, the journey of healing is partially a journey of isolation, because you are going to go through a stage that is very isolating, where you spend a lot of time alone, and that's by design so that you really get clear on the internal. What's going on in here? Who are you in here? So that being said, it makes total sense that you would sort of isolate yourself from friends and family for a period of time. It's not forever. So allow that to be the case, but seek out the help that you need to create those spaces, one-to-one spaces, where you do feel seen, heard, and understood. That, along with the tools that I share, are going to be really powerful in helping you to see, hear, and understand yourself. And that way you won't need the relationships outside of yourself to be the places where you see, hear, and understand, where you feel seen, heard, and understood, I should say. And the reason why this is important is because in order to really create genuine, authentic relationships, you can't go into it desiring to be seen, heard, and understood. I think a lot of people have this real like desire in themselves that like, you know, if I just find that partner, then that person that sees, hears, and understands me, then I'll finally feel fulfilled, then I'll feel understood. Or if I just make new friends, if I meet the right people, if I could just meet the right people, then I would finally feel understood and seen. And then it's like you're not like meeting the right people, you're not meeting a partner. So yeah, that's what you mean, my dear. Well, that's exactly the place that a lot of people are in particular women. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you're right at this critical point where you're recognizing that there is something missing, right? But you think, and by you I mean so many of us think, that that void that you feel is supposed to be filled by specific people so that you feel better. But do you see how then you're going into relationships wanting something from it, needing something from it, trying to extract something from it so that you feel whole, so that you feel seen, heard, and understood? And it's not a genuine way to go into new relationships. So that's probably why the relationships aren't presenting themselves to you, because you're not at a place where it's coming from like the most genuine energy. And the way that you create the healthy energy to then go build a relationship is Honestly, this is probably the most important thing. You have to have a one-to-one healer. So, Gorgeous Hearted, do you have a anybody that you work with one-to-one? Are you doing the energy work? Do you have a therapist? Do you have a coach? Like, these are the people, like, when you are yearning for those relationships to fulfill you in your life, it's not wrong. But what it's telling you is that there's something that is needed. There's spaces that are needed where you need to figure out how to feel seen, heard, and understood in your life without those people first. So we think if I get those people, I'll feel fulfilled in this, right? But it's actually, I need to feel fulfilled first, and then I'll attract those people. Because you want to show up in a new relationship as a fully embodied, like, capable, fulfilled version of yourself. And yet that's who you want to attract as well. So the starting point is not, it's not let me find those people and then it'll all be good. It's let me create the spaces for myself and then attract those people, because then they'll be on my level. Typically, if you attract at this point, it's still going to be people that are unhealed, and that's not bad either. I mean, it could actually be that, you're both in this healing, in your own healing journeys, and you attract each other so that you can grow into the better versions of yourself. That's a possibility, but that's going to be a lot harder and a lot trickier to navigate, going into a new relationship with two people that are unhealed, rather than making sure that you are actually fulfilling yourself and then attracting the right people. Okay, I have a psychiatrist. I probably need a coach and to go back to therapy. Yeah, because as far as I understand, psychiatrist isn't like the person that's talking to you. It's not the person it's like the medication person. So yeah, really consider whether you could benefit from having more spaces where you do feel seen, heard, and understood, because that's the key, is creating those spaces for yourself. And it could be other things. It could be, there could be other spaces that you find those things, like creative spaces, for example. But I'm a big, big proponent that everybody needs at least one, if not multiple, like one-to-one spaces where you feel fully seen, heard, and understood, where you can freely express yourself. And then, my dear, it's all about using the tools that I share. It's about the feeling of feelings practice, the anger and rage practice, energy protection. Those are the three. And those are all available on my YouTube, in the link in my bio. So those are the ways. Once you start doing the feeling of feelings practice, that's going to help you to start to actually see yourself, see, hear, and understand yourself. And so that taking the steps to see, hear, and understand yourself, and then you making sure that you have external spaces where that is reflected back to you so that you feel seen, heard, and understood by another human being. Those two things will create the fulfillment in you, because now you're not going to you don't need to rely on the people around you to fulfill that need. You don't need to rely on your relationships. And this is where the beauty is, because then you attract people, and you'll meet, and here's the other thing, actually. When you don't need anything from anybody, you can actually just meet people where they're at. So then you will engage with new people. Some people will be able to meet you at a deeper level. Some people will be able to meet you at a surface level. But you don't need either of those things to be different, because you don't need anything from them. You're not expecting anything. You're not desiring them to be a certain way. So you're able to approach new relationships in a way where you just can accept where they're at, because you don't need them to be anywhere else. And that's beautiful. That's a beautiful place to be, because then you can approach it with curiosity as to where they're at. And if they, let's say if you go out dating, if they are at the surface level or somewhere that's not where you want to be, or if you want like a more in-depth, a partnership, it doesn't mean so much anymore, because you can just accept that's where they're at. You don't need that. You don't need anything from them. You don't need them to see, hear, or understand you. You already got that covered. And so if they're not gonna be this deep person that's gonna be partnership material, you could let it go. You could be friendly with them, but that's the beauty of not needing. That's why it's really important to get to this place where you don't need them. You don't need anybody to see, hear, or understand you, because you're already taking care of that. You're checking that box yourself, again, through you having the practices of doing that, and through making sure that you have the supportive spaces where you're going to feel that way. That takes so much pressure off both new relationships as well as existing relationships. One of the reasons, kind of going back to this, one of the reasons why we feel so much anger and resentment towards our family of origin is because they can't see, hear, and understand us. And a lot of times the tension that exists there is because they can't see, hear, and understand you, and you constantly try to get them to see, hear, and understand you. You're constantly pushing for them to see, hear, and understand you. You're constantly trying to express yourself, or you're trying to like have a conversation with them, or you're getting angry at them. Even getting angry at somebody and like blowing up at them is still you being like, see me, hear me, right? Like, all of the anger and resentment is because your family can't see, hear, and understand you. But again, when you're starting to give those things to yourself, you don't need them to fill that bucket. So you can accept them for where they're at, because you don't need anything from them. And that's the real mature adult kind of healing that we get to when we're ready to stop playing the victim, when we're ready to step into our power, when we're ready to stop being the child of a parent and just be an adult. So this is why the things that I talk about are so critical. The tools that I talk about are so critical, because they literally impact every single relationship in your life, every potential relationship in your life. This is the most important thing. Okay, I know I missed some comments. Okay, green tea shot. I do EMDR therapy with my psych also, but yeah, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, that's good then, my dear. Okay, Ask Patrick said, first time visit, first comment. Hello, Patrick, thank you for being here. Why do we develop emotional dysregulation? I mean, that is probably a pretty complex question or complex response. And if you have anything more specific to add, please do so. But simply put, emotional dysregulation is simply any emotion that is not high frequency. So it would be emotions like anger, sadness, fear, resentment, guilt, shame, hurt, confusion. Those are probably like the big ones, but you get the idea. All of those emotions are actually us existing in a dysregulated state. Regulated state is high vibration emotions, high frequency. So love, peace, joy, gratitude, excitement, passion. So why do we develop emotional dysregulation is because we're human beings and we're meant to experience the whole spectrum of human emotion, including those. So it's actually very natural. However, the issue arises when our nervous systems have learned from childhood, from a young age, to fear certain things. And so it overcompensates and looks for problems, looks for scary things in our environment. Whenever we dip into any of those dysregulated emotions, it's our inner child. Your inner child is coming up because it needs you to be the parent that it didn't have, to show you that having those hard emotions is okay and it's safe and that you are safe. So having emotional dysregulation is a real gift, because if it's uncomfortable enough, it's going to drive you to seek for solutions. And I think that's what we're seeing in the greater kind of collective, is people wanting solutions because they don't want to experience their life that way anymore. They don't want you to, they don't want to go through their life feeling anxiety and fear, or live in a state of anger towards their family. So allow yourself to find the solutions, the tools, and these are practices. It's not just like you do one meditation and you're cured. That's not how this works. We need practices that we do regularly. And that is why what I teach are practices. You can find them on my YouTube. There's 3 main practices that will help you to get to that state of peace. Because what I always say is, like, it's not about getting yourself to like this high vibration state of peace and then just staying there, right? That's not reasonable. We're humans, and again, we're meant to experience the whole spectrum of human emotion. So what's a better way to do it is to get yourself to a place where your baseline is up here, but then you have the tools for when you do fall, when you fall into anger or fear or sadness or guilt or shame, and you know how to get yourself back up. I think that's where a lot of people struggle, to be honest with you, because they don't know how to get themselves back up. And that's the most important piece. Okay, thank you, Shayna, for the follow. What if my natural baseline is not experiencing most emotions? Um, that's probably more common than you think, because you're suppressing emotions then. So it's gonna be a journey of exploring what your real emotions really are and being honest with yourself. Perhaps trying to journal out what's coming up for you, because if you don't experience most emotions, then you've probably been suppressing those for a long time. So you probably do need somebody one-to-one to kind of work with that, work on that with you. Hold on, let me take a drink of water, my dears. Um, Jason, that's really quite a judgment that you've made about people with low EQ. Point is, I'm not suppressing anything. I feel completely fine with it. I'm just curious. Well, then I'm not sure what to tell you. I don't understand the question. If you're not feeling the whole spectrum of human emotion, then you are suppressing. Um, yeah, yeah. And you've got to be honest with yourself about that. Jason, it's a judgment because you're you're making a judgment about what that person's emotional level is when you don't actually know. Um, and that's not, boundaries are supposed to be specific. And boundaries are best set with people that you have shared trauma with, Well, I suppose there's two categories you could say. There's people that you have shared trauma with, which is really the meat of who boundaries are for. Why? Because boundaries are meant for relationships where there's going to be some space and distance, relationships where you aren't going to feel seen and heard and understood. So that's going to be the majority of relationships in your life. But I would say most importantly, your family of origin, because you have shared trauma with them, that's going to be some of the most important relationships where you set boundaries, because those are the ones that can emotionally impact you the most. So that's a good place to start with the boundaries question. But boundaries, it's boundaries, this is not a judgment thing. This is not this person has a low emotional intelligence, so I don't engage with them. No. It would be better to say something specific like this. So when this person criticizes me or anyone else, I leave the room. That's a boundary. When this person raises their voice, I end the conversation. Boundaries are about what you're going to do. They're not a judgment on the other person, and they're not a rule that you're making for the other person. So it's best to phrase them this way, because what we're not trying to do, we're not trying to control anybody or anything. And we're also not trying to like place ourselves in a superior position as them. If that's the case, and that is what I hear from making a judgment of somebody being low EQ, then you probably have somebody specific in mind, and you probably still have anger towards that person. So the real issue is that you have anger to feel towards certain people. Okay. Thank you, Trans Rights and our Human Rights, for the follow. Please do ask your questions, my dears, and please do like and share the live. So this is really, really important, because so often we're like, we think we're setting boundaries, but we're really not. And then we can't understand why we're in this state, why we are still in this state of anger and resentment towards people. We can't understand why that person's not changing because we told them the change that we wanted. So, and please feel free to share any examples or ask questions about your specific scenarios if that feels like the right thing to do for you. Because again, people are going to have similar cases. So it's really helpful to talk about specific scenarios. But what I will say is that it does need to be specific. And this is why I talk about these topics in tandem with teaching the tools that I teaching the feeling of feelings practice, because you have to have a practice in this journey as you're setting boundaries to provide yourself an outlet to feel the hard feelings that come up. You have to. And it's great to have a therapist or a coach or somewhere where you can express those hard feelings, and that's necessary during this journey. And it's also necessary for you to have your own practice that you can do at any time, so that you're not reliant upon that session with your therapist or your coach to be the sole outlet for you to express your emotions. And it's really important, just as a human being and as an adult human being, that you can provide whatever you need for yourself. So that's why these practices are so important. Feeling and feelings practices in my YouTube video. That is step one. If you haven't done that, watch that video. And it's in many of my past lives too. I've done the feeling and feelings practice in the past lives, so you can look through those too if you want. But this is the foundational practice. It's the foundational practice because it's the thing that will allow us to be most supportive for ourselves in our journey as we're doing really hard things. And setting boundaries is hard. It's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable because even when you're focusing on what you can control, my other examples, if this person criticizes me, then I leave the room. Or yeah, I think that's what I said, right? So if that person criticizes, or you just leave the house, whatever, right? Like you take yourself away from the situation. So let's say your mom or your dad or your sibling or somebody, like they are typically criticize you, or they comment on something about you, or even just about other things. Maybe you have political differences and they make some sort of comment that like perhaps feels triggering for you, right? Because this really what it is. Um, if you feel that trigger, instead of engaging with that, you do what you said you would do, which is you promised yourself that you would leave. So do what you promised yourself to do and leave. And then have the feeling of feelings practice to feel your hard feelings that come up, because you need to do that. Feel your feelings, get back to a high vibration state of peace, and then figure out if there's any additional boundary that you want to set. For example, maybe now, if that person continuously does this thing and maybe you've asked them to stop doing this thing, that's not a boundary, by the way. That's just an expression of need or an expression of hurt. That's not the boundary. The boundary comes when you say what you're going to do. So if this person has demonstrated a few times that they're not capable of meeting you where you want to be met and changing this particular behavior, then your boundary is, okay, then now when this happens, I walk away. Or if it keeps happening, now I'm actually going to remove more access to myself. So that means that I'm only going to go see mom or dad for 30 minutes at a time once a month. So you have a lot more control over how you engage with people than you actually think. Sometimes we feel a little bit victimized, like, well, I can't just change my behavior because what if they notice, or what if they get upset? Yeah, that's probably going to be part of it. They probably will get upset, and that's why you need a feeling of feelings practice, so that you have an outlet where you can express either the guilt or the fear, whatever's coming up for you. Um, Magic Milo, hello, my dear. Once I started releasing more of what I could not control has made my life more peaceful. Exactly, my dear. That's exactly what we're talking about. Thank you for sharing that, because you're right. This is all what this all is about. And the reason why I come on here and do this is because I want people to live more peaceful lives. That's my goal. And you've got to want it so badly for yourself that you are ready to put your piece above everything, above the narratives in your mind about your parents or your siblings or whoever. You're putting it above other people's comfort. Because, by the way, when you start setting boundaries, yeah, people will get uncomfortable. People will often try to like when you are taking access away, people will try to grab for your access because they're like, why are you taking it away? Give it back. And that is part of the journey. Okay, is it wrong if I just immediately stop talking to people that break my boundaries? So the intention of this conversation for me is to convey that boundaries are promises to yourself. They're not rules for other people. So nobody can actually break your boundary except you, because it's a promise to yourself. So really, it's funny because we think about boundaries as being something like between you and the other person. The boundaries are really between you and you. Because again, it's a promise to yourself. When I say to myself, if this person criticizes me or comments on how I look or something, I'm going to leave, the only person that needs to honor that boundary is me. When I say this person raises their voice at me, I leave. The only person that needs to honor that is me. When I say I'm only going to engage with this person for 30 minutes at a time because that's my limit with them, then I'm the only one that needs to honor that and make sure that it's 30 minutes. At 29 minutes, I'm saying goodbye and I'm out the door. When I say to myself, with this person, I only text with them. I do not have phone conversations with them. That's on me to not answer the phone. And of course, to not call. So all of these examples are ways in which you can start to take back your power within relationships that don't feel safe. And oftentimes our family of origin relationships don't feel that safe. But here's the kicker. They can feel safe and they will feel safe once you start doing this. Because again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, then you don't need anything from them. Once you start giving yourself the things that you need, you don't need anything from them. You don't need them to be different. You don't need them to see, hear, and understand you at all. But the journey of it does mean that hard emotions are going to come up when you realize the whole time what you've really been wanting from them is to see, hear, and understand you. That's why you ask for the change in behavior. And then when they can't do the change in behavior, why you get so angry, why you cut them off. It's because you have hard feelings to feel about the fact that they aren't there yet. They're not where you want them to be. Doesn't mean that you just totally write off the relationship like it's invaluable. Some relationships you'll need to take much, much, much more distance, but that's not the case for a lot of relationships. And we can't just cut people off when they can't meet us where we want to be met. That's going to get you to a place where you're alone because nobody, even the people that can see, hear, and understand you most of the time, will fail you. Every single person in your life will fail you at some point. We don't just cut people off because they're not where we want them to be, but we do get to decide how much access they have to us and how much energy we extend into that relationship. And that's where we take back our power and start to organize our own energy and our own time and our own values towards the things that really light us up. Probably put a little less energy on those relationships. Thank you, Kata Straw, for the follow, my dear. I don't have any boundaries. I feel guilt when I try setting one or worried they'll leave. Yes, my dear, that's very common. So in that case, I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel, look at the Feeling of Feelings practice, do that because part of the journey of setting boundaries is exactly what you've described. And that's why so many people don't do it because it's scary. It's scary because, and again, it's not scary because you're setting a rule for someone and you're not sure that you'll do it because boundaries aren't rules. What's scary about it is that you finally, in a relationship, most of the time in relationships that have lasted like your whole life, at least with your family of origin relationships, and then all of a sudden you start changing the dynamic, you start taking access away, yeah, that person's going to push back. Let's say you've set a boundary with yourself because you realize a particular person in your life kind of drains you, or is real negative or something. And so you're like, I'll text with them, but I'm not going to talk to them on the phone. And then you all of a sudden like stop answering their calls, or you just like text them back, or you start saying stuff like, hey, I'm not really in the mood to talk. Hope everything's okay. Like they're going to probably call you more. Like because people get real anxious, and a lot of these people we're in kind of codependent relationships to begin with when we don't even realize it. So like when you pull back, a lot of people are going to kind of anxiously attach and try to go towards you. And that's going to create more anxiety in you, and that's going to create probably like a sense of fear and a sense of guilt, just like you've said. And so the fix isn't to like change what you're doing if you feel like that's the right thing. Actually, the thing to do is to feel those feelings and give those feelings space and freedom to be felt. And that's the feeling of feelings practice that I have on my YouTube channel that is free. And it's in many of my past lives as well, so you can take a look. So when you do feel those feelings, it's not a problem. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. What it means is that you have hard feelings to feel and that you need an outlet to feel them. And that's what the feeling of feelings practice is about. Makes sense, but I feel like I'm too harsh if I do set a boundary like that. Yeah. And I'm just giving examples. So you figure out whatever boundaries feel right for you based on your intuition and what feels like it's fitting for the person in the scenario. And again, like I just said, it doesn't mean that hard feelings won't come up. Guilt does not mean that you're doing something wrong. Guilt does not mean that you've done the wrong thing. So let's make that real clear. A lot of people, I think, feel guilty and then they think they've done the wrong thing. That's not the message that guilt is bringing. The way through that is to feel it, not to try to fix it. And this is a journey of learning to trust yourself. Because if you really if you really feel like certain people in your life are just not really good for your energy and you love them, but maybe you just kind of are ready for a little less energy put towards them, especially while you're healing still. A lot of times it's really important, the people that trigger you the most, that you actually take distance from them during your own healing journey so that you can learn the skills that I teach, that other people teach. But the skills that I teach are really helpful because then when you go into having interactions with them, you have the skills to be able to be in your peace over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen immediately, but over time you build the skill sets. And that's why I always call these practices. These are practices that you have to commit to doing at least every week. Beacon of faith, I won't tolerate slander or gossip. That's not a boundary, my dear. That's a rule. Anytime you're kind of phrasing something like I won't tolerate or I don't accept, that's not a boundary. And it's not coming from the right energy. It's kind of coming from like a energy of like looking down on someone for their behavior. And I think again, this is probably a scenario where you might have certain people in mind that like often gossip, talk about people behind their back. And so it's not about whether you tolerate it or not, or whether you accept it or not. What do you do when that happens? That's the promise to yourself, because what we're not trying to do is we're not trying to like police the world and like change people's behaviors based on what we think is right. And we're also just we're not going to like cut off every single person and not being around every single person that has a behavior that we don't like. Again, you'd be alone. So it's about deciding, first of all, if there are specific people in your life that do gossip, because I agree, it's not a healthy habit, but it also doesn't mean that those are bad people. It means that that's they're in a place where that feels like connection to them. And while we can understand that, we don't need to be around it. And so it's about deciding if there are certain people like that in your life, how much energy you want to put into those relationships. Meaning maybe you only see that person, a few times a year. Maybe you only see that person in group settings. Maybe you don't really have like deep conversations with that person. You just stay at the surface level. Maybe you don't have that person over to your house. Like there's so many ways that we can have control over how we're engaging in the relationship. We don't need to control them. And then inevitably, this behavior that we don't like is probably still going to happen in front of us. So what's our response? Walk away. But I think it's also important in this particular example that we feel the hard feelings that come up, because I'm sure that there is some type of hard feeling that's come up in whatever way. Like maybe you feel frustrated or angry at certain people because they've talked behind other people's back, and that makes you distrust them. Like maybe you think that they talk behind your back or whatever it is, or maybe they've said stuff that you don't agree with. I don't know what your scenario is, but feel the hard feelings and validate the feelings that are coming up about how that makes you feel. Because once you do that and you really allow yourself to feel that, what happens is, because then you're seeing and hearing and understanding yourself, it takes the need for judgment away. Because when we're trying to get to a state of internal peace, that means that doesn't align with judgment. So whenever we're then judging somebody else, and we're human, we all do it. The idea is not to be perfect. The idea is simply to be able to reflect without judgment of yourself on that, right? So try not to judge yourself if you're judging. Sometimes that can be hard. I've been there myself. But really, like, what it means when you're kind of judging somebody else's behavior is that you just have hard feelings to feel towards it. And once you can feel those hard feelings, you can get to a place of compassion where when they do gossip in front of you, you can almost like see it. I like to see it as like, oh, kind of like a child, like, oh, how sweet. They're trying to connect. They're trying to connect. They think that's connection. And I don't need to change that. And I also don't need to engage with it. I can let it be. My energy protection tutorial would probably be also helpful in that scenario, to protect your energy while you're around triggering behaviors. Origin family doesn't feel safe. I think you maybe meant I want them to. The thing about family of origin is, typically for a lot of us on this journey, they're not going to always feel like the safest. There might be certain people that within your family of origin that feel safer, but those relationships I found typically are ones that are meant to create tension for us so that we learn how to step into our own power. So they're not actually supposed to be the relationships where you feel really seen, heard, and understood. At least for many of us on the spiritual journey, many of us on this healing journey, oftentimes we grow up in families where we don't feel seen, heard, and understood. And then once we get into adulthood and we start our healing journey, and there's still like this inner child in us that really wants them to see, hear, and understand us, and we like try to fight for it, and we try to express ourselves, and we say, hey, it really hurt my feelings when you did this, or hey, I really need this, or whatever, or we end up blowing up, or we end up engaging in old behaviors that are unhealthy, or we end up shutting down, or whatever it is. Like, we're trying so hard to get them to see, hear, and understand us, And the hard truth, which is why we need the feeling of feelings practice, is that they're actually not the relationships that are meant to be that for us. And what they're doing, which is the gift in them, is they're providing attention so challenging and so hurtful that it drives us to look for the tools that we need to be able to see, hear, and understand ourselves. And so let that be the gift in them, instead of trying to force them to be something that they're not. It doesn't mean that you have to give them up. I've been there too myself before, where I'm like, well, if I can't feel seen, heard, and understood in this relationship, then I have to give it up. Then it's not a healthy relationship for me and I have to cut them out. Mm-mm. We don't need to do all that. No, no. Part of the journey is feeling the fear of that, allowing yourself to feel the real fear that comes up, because you love these people, whether they see, hear, understand you or not. You love them and you can't help that. But it's really about getting to a place where you see, hear, and understand yourself using the tools that I teach, and where you create safe spaces, like with a therapist, like with a coach, like with an energy healer, Reiki teacher, like with a, I don't know, whoever, whatever type of healer that feels like the right kind for you. These are all examples of healers. And even looking for other spaces, that are maybe more creative spaces or spiritual spaces, that maybe groups, different groups or whatever it is, that's going to like feed your soul more, feel safer. But even those groups, they don't take the place of the one-on-one. Everybody needs a one-on-one, at least one one-on-one relationship with a healer. Meaning it can't be me, because I'm not talking to you one-on-one. You're welcome, Catastrophe, my dear. MX, what makes a boundary different from a rule? Good to see you, MX. Thanks for being here. Oh, well, it's very simple. So a rule is don't speak to me that way. And a boundary is when this person speaks to me that way, I leave. So a boundary is about what your behavior is going to be. It's not about their behavior. You're focused 100% on what you're going to do. You're feeling empowered in your own decision, in your own choices, and deciding what energy you want to be around, how you're going to react. And you're not focused on controlling their behavior, setting rules for their behavior. So setting boundaries in this way is actually incredibly empowering. Please like and share the live, my dears. And great questions tonight. So thank you so much for being so open with your questions and asking specific scenarios, because I think it's really, really helpful for other people to learn from. And it's helpful for me to have specific examples to talk to as well. So I'll probably sign off here pretty soon, but let me know if you guys have any last questions, if there's anything else that you're wondering about. But I do think we went over a lot of really good information today, and I hope that it was helpful. Like I said, you can find my YouTube channel on the link in my profile, and all my past lives, well, not all of them, because I've been doing this a while, but I'm gonna mostly post my lives from here on out, because people were saying that, they come in late or have to leave and they don't get to see the whole thing. So I wanted you all to be able to have the resources to go access that yourself, and to be able to have the access to the 3 main tools that I teach, which are feeling of feelings practice. That's the number 1. If you want to start somewhere, that's the one to start with. Anger and rage practice, that's number 2. And then thirdly, I would say the energy protection. Those are the 3 tools that are the main tools that I teach that I think are incredibly important that every human should have. And that's my intention, is to share those things with you. Do you have any tips on finding a healer? Yeah, firstly, use your intuition on what makes the most sense in terms of like what type of healer, whether you want to look for a therapist, whether you want to look for a coach, whether you want to look for an energy healer, or maybe multiple of those. And look, I mean, I guess it depends. Like if you have, I've used BetterHelp in the past, and it's a really great resource, and you can actually like search specific things if you want. If you want a therapist that is more spiritual, you can search that specifically. Um, there is like a more cost-effective option on there. I shared some of this last week, so that is actually at the end of my last live. You can take a look at that, but it's basically what I said was like use your intuition and then Google, like just Google what feels right, like energy healer near me or spiritual therapist or whatever. And again, if you need a more cost effective solution, then you can look at BetterHelp. That's the only one that I've like used in terms of those things. I only really like to recommend things that I've used. So, and then once you establish a relationship with a therapist, you can go offline, and some therapists will even offer a discount if you have financial need, even from the BetterHelp discount. And then also I would say a lot of like energy healers, Reiki teachers have like free or donation-based sessions that they offer, like community-based sessions or free clinics. So look those up as well, because they're incredibly powerful. And energy healing is really, really powerful. But it is expensive if you are not doing it through like a donation-based kind of format or like community-based format. And I would also say that you still, even if you're doing energy healing, you still should have somebody that you're actually talking to, like a therapist or coach. Coaches are just kind of expensive. I know, because I've been one, and well, I am one. I just don't do one-on-one anymore. But you can find amazing coaches. I mean, one of my coaches has been one of the biggest influences in my life. She's incredibly expensive, but it was worth it in my opinion. And I had the money at the time to be spending on that, but some people don't. And so I think you've got to use your intuition and then trust your judgment. Trust whatever feels like the right thing and go from there. So my dears, I'm going to end there. Thank you so much for being here and for asking your amazing questions. And I'm sending you so much love. I'll be back on next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Eastern time. I used to live on Pacific time, but I live on Eastern time, and my brain can never like remember where I am. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. You're welcome, my dear. Thank you for being here again. And I'm sending you so much love and so much light, and have a great week until next week. And check out my YouTube if you want to on the other resources that are there. So bye.